"Don't drink that," said the black car washer. And the millionaire threw the champagne in the employee's face. The sun was slowly setting over the calm waters of the California coast, tinting the sky with shades of gold and pink. Inside the resort, the buzz was constant. Decorators rushed by with vases of white orchids, chefs shouted instructions in French, and waiters rehearsed the perfect route between crystal tables. Nothing could go wrong. Everything had to be flawless. Downstairs, in the basement, among luxury cars gleaming under the artificial garage lights, Rafael was vigorously scrubbing the hood of a red Ferrari. He was just another car washer, blue uniform, calloused hands, sweat dripping down his neck. But his eyes, they were alert to everything. A few months ago, he had started that job almost by accident. A simple man, with a hard past and few friends. But he possessed something rare among the invisible staff of the resort: sharp observation and an instinctive sense of alert. That afternoon, between one car and another, Rafael saw something that made him pause for a few seconds. One of the waiters came down to the garage carrying a small silver cooler. He walked quickly, glancing around, and handed it to a security guard Rafael recognized, one from Noah Mariani's personal circle. Unaware he was being watched, the guard took the box, opened it quickly, and removed a champagne bottle with a discreet red ribbon around the neck. Then he disappeared through a service door. Rafael frowned. That wasn't part of the standard protocol. He knew. The drinks came from the central cellar, all numbered, all checked. Moments later, back at the outdoor parking area, Rafael heard a whisper through a passing waiter's radio. "The red ribbon goes straight to the toast table. No mistakes." Those words sent a chill down his spine. Could it be coincidence? Some internal code? A simple overreaction from the staff? Maybe. But something inside Rafael said otherwise. He wasn't paranoid, just careful. He had seen people betrayed by friends, siblings, even by their own wives. Rich people, especially, were often surrounded by well-dressed snakes. On the glass hall's veranda, guests crowded together, dressed in shades of white and gold. Musicians played an orchestral version of All of Me, and everyone laughed and toasted under the glamorous dusk. Livia appeared stunning, hand in hand with Noah, descending the stairs like a fairy tale princess. She smiled naturally for the photographers, but Rafael noticed her eyes, lowered, strangely dull. The waiter with the red-ribboned bottle approached. Glasses were filled. Noah raised his, smiling subtly. Camera shutters clicked. And then Rafael felt his blood boil. He couldn't explain it. Had no proof. But if he stayed silent, something inside him would die too. Letting the microfiber cloth fall to the ground, Rafael sprinted across the garden, ran up the steps of the hall amid bewildered stares, and pushed through the guests, hearing shouts of, "Hey, who's that guy? Security." As Noah raised the glass to his lips, Rafael shouted, "Don't drink that." The hall froze. An instant silence fell over everything. Photographers stopped. Musicians stood still. Livia looked over, confused. The waiter trembled. Rafael stood in the middle of the room, breathless, eyes locked on the glass. Noah slowly lowered his arm, looked at Rafael, with a gaze no one could interpret, then looked at Livia, then at the glass. And without saying a word, he threw the entire champagne in Rafael's face. The impact of the cold liquid was followed by a collective gasp. Livia's eyes widened in horror. Rafael stood there, soaked, champagne dripping from his face, unsure whether he had just saved a life or sealed his own downfall. Noah returned the glass to the waiter's tray, turned, and calmly walked out of the hall. The toast of the century had ended in chaos. And no one, not even Rafael, knew that the real game was only just beginning. The guests stood frozen. Some laughed nervously. Others recorded the moment. The scene was too absurd to be real. A billionaire throwing a glass of champagne into the sweaty face of a car washer in the middle of his own wedding party. Livia stepped back, unsure if what she had just witnessed was an attack, a breakdown, or a gesture of pure contempt. "Security!" shouted one of the event coordinators, breaking the silence like a thunderclap. Two burly men grabbed Rafael by the arms as he, still dazed and soaked, tried to form some kind of explanation. He didn't resist. He let them take him, his eyes fixed on Noah, who had already turned his back and disappeared up the inner stairs. I just wanted to warn him, Rafael murmured, his voice choked. There was something wrong. But no one was listening.
Or they pretended not to.
Rafael was led to a service room in the back of the resort, where staff usually changed or rested between shifts. There, the operations manager, a slim blonde man named Douglas, awaited him with a poisonous expression of false calm. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" he said, arms crossed. "Interrupting a Mariani wedding during the toast? I saw something suspicious. The bottle, the one with the red ribbon. It was swapped. By someone from the security circle," Rafael replied, trying to stay composed. Douglas looked at the guards. "What red ribbon?" "On the champagne bottle. I heard a waiter say over the radio that it was going straight to the toast. But it wasn't from the standard stock. I know the delivery codes. That bottle didn't belong there." "Oh, so now you're a champagne expert too?" The guards chuckled under their breath. Rafael felt his face burn. Not from the champagne, but from the humiliation. He was sure of what he'd seen. Sure that something was wrong that night. But now he just looked like another overreacting employee, maybe jealous, maybe envious, maybe insane. Douglas sighed deeply, like someone giving one last chance before delivering the final blow. "You have two options, Rafael. One is to stay here until the event ends, quietly, and tomorrow we'll decide what to do with you. The other is to leave now without a scene, and never set foot in this resort again." Rafael looked around. The other employees avoided his gaze. Even the colleagues he ate lunch with every day had their heads down. "I'll stay," he said firmly. Douglas shrugged. "As you wish. But you'll stay locked in here. For your own safety, of course." In the cramped, windowless room, Rafael sat on the floor and leaned against the wall. His uniform was cold, still soaked with champagne. The sweet smell of the drink clung to his skin. In his mind, the scene replayed again and again. The bottle swap, the hurried waiter, the whisper on the radio. Noah's look before throwing the drink. He hadn't hesitated, didn't even seem surprised. He just looked. But why didn't he defend him? Why expose him that way? Outside the room, the party slowly resumed. Background music began playing again. A cheerful announcer's voice introduced a change in the playlist. Waiters served dessert. Guests whispered about the scandal between sips of wine. Rafael's humiliation became part of the wedding folklore, an eccentric footnote, a ready-made joke for gossip columns. On the other side of the resort, Livia cried alone in one of the bungalows reserved for the newlyweds. Makeup smudged, her white dress still clinging to her body. She didn't understand what had happened. Noah hadn't said a single word. He had simply thrown the drink at that man and walked away. "He thought I was trying to poison him." She looked in the mirror. For a moment, she didn't recognize the woman in the reflection. When had she lost control of that relationship? When had she agreed that the marriage would be so formal, so contractual, filled with clauses, lawyers, negotiations? She had accepted everything, even the guest list and the menu, but never imagined that her dignity would be at stake, let alone at the altar. Meanwhile, Noah sat in silence in his suite, staring at the empty glass in front of him. There were no outbursts, no commands, no questions. He was just thinking. It had happened faster than expected. He thought the test would unfold quietly, maybe during dinner, maybe at the final toast. But no. A staff member, a car washer of all people, had anticipated the plan and reacted. Unknowingly, Rafael had completely changed the course of the night. At 2 a.m, one of the guards discreetly slid an envelope under the door of the room where Rafael was being held. Inside was a single folded sheet of paper, handwritten in black ink. "You were right. No signature. No explanation." Rafael held the note for several minutes, as if trying to grasp the weight of a sentence far too simple for the absurd situation he found himself in. He now knew, deep down, that he wasn't crazy. But he still had no idea just how deep the hole he had stepped into truly was. Monday dawned cold, gray, and silent at the Mar Azul resort. What was supposed to be the day after a memorable ceremony, praised by magazines, captured in drone footage, and surrounded by celebrities, had become the beginning of a smothered scandal. There were no headlines. Noah Mariani controlled the press the way he controlled the markets, with money, discretion, and non-disclosure agreements. Still, between the lines of gossip columns, one could read. Party interrupted by unexpected crisis. The billionaire and the bride, silence after controversial toast. A strange incident ended the wedding of the year. But off the radar was Rafael. Rafael returned to the coastal town where he lived in a tiny room above a mechanic shop. Next to his bed sat a backpack with 2 changes of clothes, the uniform still damp with traces of champagne, and the note, "You were right." In the following days, he tried to get on with life. He looked for jobs at other garages, but the owner's eyes scanned him like they already knew something. Someone, maybe the resort itself, had made sure to log that he had caused an incident during a high-end event. "We don't trust people who stir trouble at rich folks' parties," said one mechanic before Rafael could even finish his sentence. The humiliation wasn't just the champagne. It was the silence that came afterward. And something else disturbed him even more. Noah never appeared. Never called. Never sent a message. Nothing. That note now felt like it had been written by someone else. A momentary relief that now sounded like mockery. Far away, in the main Mariani family mansion, Noah silently read reports. His face remained unreadable, but his mind was alert. The original plan had been discreet: simulate the toast, observe reactions, identify possible traitors. But Rafael's unexpected appearance had disrupted the board and revealed something unexpected. He had ordered a background check on the employee, discovered that Rafael had enrolled in a technical security course, had a history of old complaints against corrupt supervisors, and a dismissal for insubordination that, according to internal records, involved defending a colleague who had been unfairly accused. Rafael was pure instinct. And he wasn't stupid. So Noah requested something unusual: a visit. In person. No press, no assistants, no security. 3 days later, the bell rang at the garage at 8 p.m. Rafael, sleeping on a makeshift mattress on the floor, opened the door in a t-shirt and flip-flops, expecting a delivery driver. But it was Noah Mariani, in a black blazer, no tie, and the same unreadable expression. Rafael took a moment to process. Looked around. No car on the street. No security in sight. Just him. And the man who had thrown champagne in his face. "Can we talk?" Noah asked, in a tone that was almost gentle. Rafael stepped aside. He didn't know whether to throw him out, punch him, or hear him out. He chose the third. They sat face to face, an old wooden chair on one side, a toolbox as an improvised seat on the other. Noah got straight to the point. "Why did you stop me from drinking?" Rafael took a deep breath. He hadn't rehearsed an answer. It was just the truth. "Because something felt wrong. I saw the bottle. I know the delivery protocol. I heard staff talking. I can't explain it, but I knew something was off. You could have stayed quiet.
Kept doing your job.
Waited until the event was over. But you walked across a room full of powerful people to shout. If I had stayed quiet, you might be dead." Noah leaned back in his chair, folded his hands, and studied the man in front of him for a long moment. Then he said, "You were right." Silence. The bottle was deliberately switched. It wasn't part of the official batch. And it contained a slow-acting poison. A dose strong enough to trigger a heart attack a few hours later. He stared at Rafael. But that's not the only issue. Rafael froze. "I already knew someone wanted me dead. For months. I planned that moment as a test. I staged the toast, had eyes on every guest. I monitored movements. And you appeared outside the script." Rafael stood up, stunned. "So you exposed me, knowing there was an attempt on your life?" "I needed to see reactions. I needed real tension to surface. And you were the trigger I didn't plan for, but the one that exposed the traitor." Rafael clenched his fists. "You used me. Noah stood up as well, calmer. I tested a circle of people. But you weren't in that circle. You weren't supposed to be there. And yet you acted. With courage. And with nothing to gain from it. He handed Rafael a small leather envelope. Inside, a handwritten letter and an access card. I want you with me. On my trusted team. The person who tried to kill me will soon be unmasked. And I want someone like you by my side. Rafael read the letter. It was a formal invitation to join the private security division of the Mariani Group. High starting salary. Functional housing. Training included. But what moved him most was the last line. You saw what no one else dared to look at. That night, Rafael didn't sleep. He read the letter over and over. Stared at the old note. Thought of all the no's he'd heard in life. All the times he had been dismissed. And felt, perhaps for the first time in years, that someone truly saw who he was. Not a car washer, but someone who sees what others ignore. And who was about to step into a game bigger than he had ever imagined. His name was Bruno Mariani, the younger brother, but always the loudest, the most spontaneous, the most charismatic. They grew up together, yet apart. Noah was the strategic silence, Bruno, the chaotic spotlight. While one preferred contracts, the other craved applause. Noah inherited the business. Bruno inherited the resentment. For years, he pretended to accept the secondary role. He smiled at company events, gave effusive speeches at gala dinners, patted investors on the back as if he were a vital part of the machine. But deep down, he was scheming. The poisoning attempt was not an isolated act. It was the final point in a series of subtle sabotages, contract manipulation, leaking internal documents, attempts at public defamation. But Noah was always one step ahead, until he realized the game had escalated. That's why he created the test. That's why he set the stage. And now, with Rafael by his side, the pieces were beginning to fall into place. Rafael was not accepted immediately into the security team. He was trained first. For weeks, he took part in simulations, studied personal protection protocols, learned to detect behavioral patterns at elite events. His natural perception, sharpened by instinct, now had technique. More importantly, he began observing Bruno. Not overtly. Noah knew Bruno would be suspicious of any new face. So Rafael was disguised, appearing first as guest security, then as an occasional driver, later as maintenance staff. And little by little he noticed. Bruno was always near the weak points. At parties, he hung around the sound system, backstage areas. He spoke with vendors who weren't on the official list. And above all, he kept contact with a fixed group of friends who never took off their sunglasses. Not even at night. At one such party, atop a penthouse in Sao Paulo, Rafael saw Bruno light a cigarette and walk away for a private conversation with a man carrying a small briefcase. Rafael discreetly approached, using the listening device provided by Noah. That's when he heard the phrase that would seal Bruno's fate. If it doesn't work with the champagne, we try another way. But he has to be out of the game before the merger with the Arabs. The recording was handed directly to the federal police. But Noah urged caution. The arrest couldn't be public or explosive. It had to be calculated. The perfect moment came at a cocktail celebrating the merger of Mariani Corp with a foreign conglomerate. All shareholders were present. And Bruno, of course, was at the center of the room as always. Rafael circulated among the guests like any waiter, the same role he had seen used by the one who switched the bottle weeks earlier. When the toast was announced, Noah raised his glass. The flashes went off. Bruno smiled as if nothing had happened. Then the detective, disguised as a French chef, appeared beside him and calmly announced, "Bruno Mariani, you are under arrest. Attempted homicide and corporate conspiracy." The room froze. Bruno tried to laugh. "Is this a show? A play? Noah, what is this?" Noah approached slowly and said simply, "You chose the stage. Now you face the audience." Behind the scenes, Rafael watched everything through a security camera in an adjacent room. He no longer needed to be disguised. For the first time since the day of the scandal, he was clean, respected, and in control. It was Noah who entered the room afterward, closing the door gently. "You did more than I expected," said the billionaire, "and never asked for anything in return." Rafael looked at the man who had humiliated him publicly. For a second, he thought of everything he had endured: the champagne in his face, the improvised arrest, the silence. But when he looked into Noah's eyes, he realized Noah had never lost control. It was all part of something bigger. "I didn't do it for you," Rafael replied. "I did it because I saw the wrong thing. And I'm not the type to close my eyes." Noah smiled. "That's exactly why I want you here. But no more disguises now. You're not a car washer. You're a sentinel, a key player." Then he extended his hand. Officially. Rafael shook it without hesitation. From that moment on, his name would no longer be ignored. Meanwhile, Livia reappeared quietly. She sent a brief message to Noah, saying she understood she was not part of the game and that she had never betrayed him. He replied simply, "I know, but I needed to see who would stay silent when I fell." Livia was never seen beside him again, but she never slandered him either. The only person who truly gained everything from that story was the one who, in the beginning, only wanted to protect someone, even without understanding what was at stake.